Hello everyone, I'm Afaf Konja and welcome to South South News. We're delighted to welcome the permanent representative of Peru to the United Nations, Ambassador Gonzalo Gutierrez, Reinel. Pleasure to meet you.
Hi.
Welcome to South South
Good morning.
News. Ambassador Reinel, on many people's minds today is the earthquake, tsunami devastation that hit the northeast coast of Japan, which also reportedly destroyed some buildings in the coast of Peru and created some flooding as well. Can you tell us the situation today in that area of Peru, and really on a more broad sense, what Peru is doing to mitigate climate change in terms of disaster mitigation?
Well, certainly it had some repercussions in Peru. Unfortunately, we're not quite serious. What we are doing in Peru is in emphasizing a lot on prevention. You know, Peru is a seismic country. We are on the other side of the Pacific from Japan. In 2007, we had a very serious earthquake there, which in that case almost destroyed a whole city, the city, a very traditional city of Pisco. So we are emphasizing a lot in the improvement of constructions, in the prevention in terms of the coastal area to eliminate the potential tsunami that a situation like this may create. But we cannot avoid it. Peru, as California, as Ecuador or Chile, we are in a circle in the Pacific where we may be affected by this natural phenomena. So we just are preparing more and more. A few weeks ago when I was in Peru, I was with the representative of the UNDP there. And they are working in a very important project by the UN to create awareness in terms of protection against natural disasters. They are preparing kits, they are preparing videos and instructions for the population in case of a situation like the one we have seen in Japan.
Absolutely, which is very, very crucial and important to be doing. Because disasters seem to be just increasing in frequency as well across the world. I'd like to delve into something very important to Peru and of course to the rest of the world, is the achievement of the Millennium Development Goals. Last year's summit on the Millennium Development Goals at the United Nations, President Garcia sort of gave a progress report on what Peru is doing to achieve the Millennium Development Goals. There's been increase in employment. There's been a great level of benefiting poverty reduction, and of course education. Education is also nicely increasing there. On education, though, we are seeing maybe a little bit of distribution issues. Tell us about the equity, let's say, distribution issues when it comes to the more rural areas, the more remote areas of Peru where accessibility is probably an issue.
Yeah, well, the effort to reduce poverty in Peru has been very successful. In 10 years, we achieved a reduction of 10% in the level of poverty and also in the extreme poverty. What the Peruvian government and the previous governments have been doing in terms of education is trying to get a more connectivity in Peru. There was a project to establish a link with computers to schools in the rural areas. This has been followed with the initiative by Mr. Negroponte here in the States to create very cheap computers for children. That's one of the initiatives we are following. Also, in terms of equity, there's also an important point to stress: the level of enrollment in school by women, which was one of the tasks that we have, one of the challenges. And we are very proud to say now that in terms of gender, we have a higher enrollment of women than men in school. So that creates the sense that we are given this priority to give more opportunities to women in the education in Peru.
Ambassador Reinel, let's talk about economics for a moment. Peru is witnessing phenomenal amounts of economic growth recently, and President Garcia again has been quoted as saying that Peru is the fastest growing economy after China, of course. And there's some very exciting projects underway. Tell us about some of the best practices in place that are really sustaining economic growth, especially when it comes to gross domestic product in Peru.
Well, it has been a policy for almost 20 years now to open the economy of Peru. Peru has negotiated trade agreements and integration agreements with almost everybody in the world now. We do have free trade agreements with the US, with Canada, with all our neighbors in South America, the Andean Group, Mercosur. We negotiate an agreement with China. We just finished the negotiation with Japan and Korea. We negotiate with EFTA in Europe, and now we are in the process of a negotiation with Central America. So one of the key areas of Peru integration and growth is this open economy to the world. And this has created a significant benefit. The economy has grown a lot in the last years. Even in the day of the year of the economic crisis, 2008, 2009, Peru had positive figures in terms of growth. Last year we achieved almost 9%. The prediction for this year, 2011, is around 6 or 7%. So we are in a good path. Now the challenge is to create more integration of the population in Peru to this growth, because basically the growth is centered in the cities in the coast. All the infrastructure, the growth have been related mainly to exports in terms of agricultural production and mining. But now the challenge is to spread this growth to the high Andes. One of the elements the Peruvian government stressed a lot was the need for the private enterprises to practice the concept of corporate social responsibility. In 2008, we had in Peru the summit of APEC, you know, the 21 large economies in the Asia Pacific. This was the first time that Peru could host a meeting of this level with the presence of the heads of state of Russia, China, US, Canada, Japan, Korea. And there the theme that Peru introduced in the discussion between the leaders of these countries was corporate social responsibility, so as the companies to assume as well the need to participate in the development. Many of the projects especially in mining, are in very far away areas of a country, and we need that the population in those areas feel that the growth, the mining projects that are developed there are of direct benefit to them, and this should be helped by the corporate social responsibility of the companies. We should say that that is going on very well. But still, we do have the challenge I mentioned before to create a significant, more equitable growth especially in the Andes and in the Amazon jungle.
Ambassador, I don't think we can talk about economy and its growth without touching on ICT, information communication technology, very important tool. As far as Peru is concerned, there are a couple of really exciting projects, as you mentioned, with South Korea. There's, of course, here China again. China, let me read this out for you. Chinatel plans to invest $62 million to offer services including internet protocol telephony over a new WiMAX network in Peru via its subsidiary Perusat, and it's going to be launched around August 2011. So just in a few months from here. Yeah. Tell us about some of these exciting projects when it comes to really building sustainable development in Peru in terms of ICT for development.
Yeah, well, in terms of technology, one of the subjects that the Peruvian government stressed is the need to reach these faraway populations and the children in terms of communicate or have access to new technologies. So Peru worked with Mr. Negroponte in this development of $100 computers. And we are in the process of distributing these computers all over the country in order to have wireless communication to faraway communities where there's no direct connection, so they can access to the international information, to have access to technology knowledge. So this is not going to be just centered in the large cities in the coast.
Very good. And then let's talk a little bit about sustainable development. The Rio +20 conference is coming up soon in Istanbul next year in 2012. And sustainable development is quite a key term that's being discussed almost on a daily basis at the United Nations. So it's truly important to the international community at large. So if you can just sort of expand on what Peru is doing in terms of sustainable development, in terms of best practices and mechanisms toward sustainable development.
Well, I would say that the two main problems in terms of sustainable development, and both of them very closely related to climate change, are the one you mentioned, the problem that we are losing the glaciers, the tropical glaciers in the world that are in South America. The figures you mentioned are absolutely correct. And a significant part of the economy of Peru is related to the availability of the water resources coming from those glaciers. But unfortunately, we in Peru cannot deal with that by ourselves. That's a global problem. But another problem related to sustainability in Peru is deforestation. The problem of deforestation in the Amazon jungle of Peru is significant, and we assume the compromise to reach the year 2020 with a zero level of deforestation. And the government now is putting all the efforts, is creating a lot of initiatives to reduce deforestation. In the case of Peru, the deforestation comes from two situations. First, the illegal logging. So we are trying to enforce the rules that exist in the country to avoid illegal logging. But the second one is related to another global problem, which is drug trafficking. The problem of the cultivation of coca in certain areas of the Amazon jungle paradoxically is creating deforestation, because that area is used for a short while and then is abandoned after cutting the trees. So these two problems interlink in Peru. And of course, for us, it's a real priority, the fighting against drug trafficking.
Ambassador, my final question has a more personal note to you. In your work at the United Nations and, of course, representing and advocating for Peru, what are you focusing on this year, and what changes would you like to see for your country?
Well, one of the areas we gave a lot of priority in the last year was a resolution that Peru prepared, negotiate, and obtain the consensus approval related to culture and development. This, for us, this is a very challenging subject, and it's related to the use as well of our natural resources in terms of culture, in terms of traditional knowledge, to create opportunities for the populations where this knowledge or resources are coming from. Basically, the people who are producing products that can be now incorporated to global trade. Also, this resolution is related to the fight against the illegal trafficking of cultural objects that we are facing in Peru. In a few days, there will be a very important situation, a very important occasion in Peru, because more than 100 years ago, or around 100 years ago, many artifacts that were excavated in Machu Picchu, this very important Inca architectural remain, were taken to the US. And we have reached an agreement with Yale University, where those artifacts were for 100 years, for all these artifacts to return to Peru. This will take place in about 1 week. So we are very happy in Peru that all these artifacts that are the original Inca artifacts obtained or that remain in Machu Picchu are going back again to their country.
That's very exciting. Congratulations.
Yeah,
it's wonderful. Ambassador Reinel, pleasure and honor to meet you.
Much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us here on South South News. I'm Afaf Konja. We'll see you soon.